Hello class, welcome back to this videos on how to use Excel to do some statistics. And so here what we're going to try to do today is show you how Excel can calculate mean, median, mode, and the standard deviation. This is the data set that we had earlier, and we want to be able to analyze this. But again, the numbers are, when your data is small, you can do a lot of this by hand, and that's why we have these formulas. But when the data sets are kind of large, you want to be able to use the tools that you have. And so hopefully you remember that the mean, another word that you might have learned in school earlier, is average. And in fact, that is what we use in Excel. To calculate the mean or the average, you actually type in the word average. I like to click on the one I want. So right here, the functions or the most recently used, and then you just drag. And voila, there it is. It actually calculates the average for you. If you didn't believe that this was the average, remember that to find the average, you take the sum of these guys, and then you divide by however many you have, which I think we have 100, a 10 by 10, and you see it actually is the same. So I'll trust it. I'll trust Excel for this one. The median is very intuitive with Excel. You say equals because you want it to compute. That's all the equals does. And then you type median, and then I want it to be median. And then again, I basically just highlight the data that I want to calculate for and press enter. And there it is. So the median is the number that kind of tells you the halfway point of the data. So half of this data is less than 580.5 and the other half is greater than 580.5. The mode, on the other hand, calculates the number that appears the most. And again, very nicely, it's a function that we already have here. And then again, we just drag. We just highlight the data that we're interested in, and we press mode, and there it is. Supposedly 537 is the mode. Now I would have to look at it more carefully to find out if it's true, or you guys can do it yourself. I can see 537 at least 2 times, well, maybe 3 times. Oh, there's a fourth one. So maybe it is the mode, but I'm not sure. And the last thing is standard deviation, but I actually want to go over how we come up with this a little bit, and we'll discuss more of this in the class and what it means when I next see you. So, how do you calculate the standard deviation? Well, here I decided to calculate the mean already, so you guys know how to do that. This is how you find the mean. To calculate the standard deviation, it turns out that the deviation just means, this data, how far is it away from the mean? And so one of the things that we'll discuss is, yeah, you can find like these numbers, the mean, the median, the mode, they calculate kind of like the central number. They're called measures of central tendency. But what you want to know, something that'll describe the data a little bit more, is, well, how far away are these numbers from the mean? And so one of the things that you can do is you can say, well, let me take the data, the numbers x, and let me subtract the mean from it. And so, for example, if I take 4.8 and subtract it from 8.58, or subtract 8.58 from 4.8, excuse me, you're going to get a negative answer, but not only that, it's going to be 3.78, right? Well, that's how far away 4.8 is from 8.5. So we want to continue doing this. We want to know all the data, how far it is. So we're thinking, well, why don't we just drag and copy? And hopefully you'll see that there's a problem with this. The issue is that Excel always tries to predict what you're trying to do. Remember, what we want to do is take the x value and subtract the mean. But in the next formula, notice that if I click over here on the formula bar, it actually subtracted 8.5 minus B17 because it thinks that you want to keep the same pattern. We faced this before, and so what we're going to do is put dollar signs. Dollar signs tell Excel, no, 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 dummy, just keep the same cell, don't change it. And so notice that now the formulas are correct. It really is subtracting the mean from x. On the second one, again, if I click on this formula bar, it really is subtracting the mean from this value of 6.1 and so on and so forth. So most people thought, so deviation, we want to know how far away. Well, why don't we just kind of take an average of this and see if this helps? And so if I take an average of all these, I get, sorry, I did that. This is actually close to 0. In fact, our calculator, our Excel program here actually doesn't know that it is 0 because it doesn't know the difference. It rounds off a bit, but it is 0. And in fact, in the book, they do an example. If you get a chance to read the book, they actually do an example, this one, to tell you the truth. And when they calculate the mean, or when they do it like this, they actually do get 0, and they explain that this is not really correct. And we can talk about this in class, why this wouldn't be the right way. So what statisticians decided to do is say, well, wait, let's not just subtract the mean from the data. Why don't we square it? That way we get positive numbers. That was the idea here. And so what we do here to mimic this is we say, take this over here, the number C4, and square it. and so you get positive. And because here we do want Excel to change, we are going to go ahead and drag, and it'll keep everything for us. And notice that this is really squaring this number over here. Here C6 squared, and so this is fine. And this is what we mean by the mean squared. Now, what statisticians wanted to do is they wanted to calculate the standard deviation, and I want you to look at this formula carefully. They have this notation for sum, and they have x, and this stands for mean. So here what they're saying is let's subtract the data from the mean, or let's subtract the mean from the data, and then let's square that, and then let's add all of them. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I'm going to say let's equal this sum, and let's add all these guys over here. So there's the sum of all these, and I'm going to make an extra column. But the variance has more. Then they want you to divide by n minus 1, where n is the number of sample elements that you have. And in fact, what they're really doing is computing this. They want to compute this thing they call sample variance. And don't get confused about the s squared. It doesn't really matter, because we want s, and to find s, we're going to take the square root. But let's go ahead and compute the variance, because you're going to be asked to do this quite a bit. And so in order to compute the variance, I need to know how much data I have. And so one way to do this is say, well, this is 1, this is 2, and just count this way. Let me highlight. And so Excel can count for me, and it tells me I have 12 data points. But another way, if I want to know how many numbers is, I can just use this command called count. And count actually, sorry, let me try that again. Count will actually, if you highlight the data, will actually count how much data is in there. And it'll tell me it's 12. And so in this formula, n is 12. And so to find the variance, not only do I take the sum, but after I take the sum, I divide by n minus 1, which is 11. 12 minus 1 is 11. But in a formula, it would be something like this. Okay, so this is the calculation of the variance. And now I can do the standard deviation. And the standard deviation, according to the formula, is the square root. And so there's the square root of this number, and it's 2.5. Now, there's another way to calculate standard deviation in Excel, and this is what you're going to use. There's a formula here, of course, for this, and it's StDev. And once you highlight these, notice that I get the same answer here and here. And so the formulas work, and Excel knows them. And so from now on, you can use the shortcut. It's okay for you to use the standard deviation. But I did want to show you what it means to calculate the variance and where these formulas come from, in case you actually need the formulas eventually. All right, so now this allows us to be able to compute the standard deviation for something like this. You know, we want to use the formula because we don't want to do this by hand. And sure enough, there it is, 95. So that means your mean is 578, and the standard deviation is, this sort of measures how far away the data is. And so in class, we'll talk about what kind of information you can gather from this. And it's actually related to our histogram. Our histogram will have a big connection to what we're measuring right here, kind of what the mean is and how far, I guess they would say they're called the measures of dispersion, how far your data is dispersed from the center. And so I hope this helps you use Excel. Hopefully you can use this whenever you need to calculate these numbers for any other classes, especially stats. And I'll